Okay, we're going to try and go over a cardio workout today. So cardio means having to do with the heart exercise, right? So heart exercise, to talk about it, it's a little bit ridiculous because ultimately it's just taking you, whatever your idea of yourself is. It can be stupid, it can be complex, and it's moving you. Your heart is a thing that's like moving you. So cardio work often just looks like a lot of movement, repetitive movement, simple, basic, whatever movement. Since you're moving all of you, you're always going to be treating you as just a single, simple object. And so the cardio and the understanding of it is just, it's really simple and it's stupid to talk about. You just have to do it. You just have to get up at the time and you just have to do it. There's nothing that can be learned any more or less. And so when you talk about it, like when you try and teach cardio like I'm doing right now, it's really stupid and you end up looking goofy and retarded. And so I'm going to tune into that, right? Like when you're teaching cardio, you look goofy and retarded, and that's usually through an activity that you do. I'm going to try and look goofy, retarded, but like flow state, so it's effortless, and that'll take me right next to actually talking about cardio. Because talking about cardio poorly, what's right next to that, or what's right outside of it? Talking about it wrong, looking stupid, goofy, and retarded, right? So you see, I'm doing a lot of like reality shifting here. You need to pay attention to all of that. There's a lot of different techniques involved. And so cardio, if you were going to work on it as a technique, since you're just moving yourself, just move. Your technique is your ability to survive that and to participate in it, right? So if you're going to do the technique for it, you're going to pick some action where you're moving your entire self, and make sure that you're moving through. The only way that you could help in your cardio is with the decision to do it. So you actually have to show up to practice. You have to like show up to the thing, and then that's you moving yourself as a simple object. And if you do that a lot and you do it really hard, no matter how you feel, no matter what is in your way or anything else, you move your body, you start to get this strength of just pushing through the situation no matter what. That's a strength that's like outside the body. And that's the primary thing for like cardio, is like if you're doing cardio and you're getting strong like that, the winds, fortune, everything is just on your side. That's what having cardiovascular health behind your activity feels like, is that meta movement. So, but it's the movement of all of that, right? So if there's a technique inside of that so that you can survive that better or read it better, one of which is to start swimming or flow state, which means literally swimming. So what's your swimming surface, right? So if I'm going to be swimming here, my swimming surface is all of this as if it's a fin. Like look at a fish and say, like, where is it pushing on the water? The whole thing, right? So if I start moving back and forth, and do I feel like my fin is as big and as long as possible? I want a fin to be as long as possible. So it would be like the entire length of my body, or at least my spine. And then that's my fin as I move back and forth. But if I can feel it right, I can have a fin that goes my entire spine, my arm, and my leg. People have just described this feeling as grounding. I don't know what, but it's, so if you're doing cardio technique, you just want to make sure that you're pushing, that you're responding to, that you're being sensitive to the field with a fin that's the whole body and not have just legs. Right? You can do movement with just pushing off of the legs usually function pretty well. That's normal, or the back, but are they connected at the hips? And so when everything's connected, it's just the whole line, along with the inertia or the momentum of the arms, is on a single like gravitational grounding column, and then that grounding column swims through the gravitational field exactly like a fish swimming through water. exactly like your hand out the car window. So that swimming motion is like the highest consciousness. That's going to be where your best technique is, right? Like as you run, the power stroke is the whole back driving through the hips and legs to the ground over and over and over again. And you look, is there any part of that column that's either fuzzy, not participating, broken? Is it, and if it does break, you can break it in other parts, doing their best, like broken if you have to break up your intent. And the other thing would be to do it to rhythm. So are you using the whole body as a fin, as a power stroke? Is the whole thing being used? And it's damn near electrical. So like if you go off balance and fall, like what happens when you fall is that you can feel the grounding column from the head basically becomes detached from the foot. And at that point, if that happens, then the whole structure kind of falls down. And so like depression, like if you feel stuck in life, a lot of the times it is that really super basic, simple cardio where you get up and do the movement with your heart. Like you can't just know the technique. You might know how to pray, but do you ever pray? You might know how to run, but do you ever run, right? Preaching myself here. But or just awareness of the presence of that big space, right? If you're having discipline, right, you're running 10 miles or whatever, you are pushing on yourself from that big mind. Okay, so it's like you'll get the same psychological, whatever gets you to feel big mind. Simple, repetitive movements paired with thoughts about the big mind is usually enough to pop into that. And so people also have idols, right? So you'll do certain repetitive movements with like thoughts of winning Little League hockey. And that'll make it so that you drop into big mind or whatever, instead of like, oh, I'm thinking about love or the highest good or virtues or things that inspire me. it not just like awareness of big mind, but like big mind having a pretty big effect. So the only way that I know of is like pretty intense, like intense breath work, intense compunction or repentance, intense, like when that big mind touches, it's not just, people aren't just like aware of it, the awareness of big mind causes like massive physiological change. So you could see that in like whatever, doing the extreme athletic activity, doing the extreme breath work, like as you dominate yourself from that outside place, as you do your marathon, right? As you push and control the world from that place, like pushing yourself over that line, like through identification with will itself, and so the body can get strong, or if you get what I'm saying, focus on the space will get strong. And people with very strong space are very centered, very light, very responsive, because you can push very strongly from the space. That's the grace of a ballerina, right? The space is super strong, but the body might not be strong. So if you can disturb the space, the athleticism will break and the body is very frail, potentially, versus like somebody who's like training body, training to fight or something like that, to wrestle. The space could be totally contracted, and that gives body like maximum power. Right? Now, those are kind of two extremes here of cardio. Like maximum space would be ballet, and then maximum power would be wrestling. Powerlifting or stuff, and the things like those sports are helped with the space, right? Like when you're at a competition, you can lift more because of the energy of the space. When you're at a ballet performance, you are more graceful because of the energy of the space. But you can become you can become a power lifter in the space of your consciousness, and that's where you move yourself from. Become a power lifter of that space. Everybody touches the space that I'm talking about if they just develop a discipline of any sort, like running, go out and run and make yourself winded every single day for weeks and weeks and weeks on end. Push your body through that arena, through that resistance, no matter what. Push yourself. Like the body's going to throw up resistance of not wanting to, of injuries, of getting tired, of whatever, and you push that anyway. You're developing this meta big mind control over the situation. And so it's not like that's it. It's not like that's the goal or enlightenment or whatever, to control yourself from that space. Any graceful person is like, people are naturally gifted in these areas. So some people have a natural, their space is strong, their vibe, their energy, their presence, their grace, their fluidity, all those things that we associate, that can get strong the exact same way you see biceps get strong. And so there's that same range. We're all there. Some of us are strong, some of us are flexible, some of us are weak, and those are all spatial abilities. And you directly change those with the discipline, with the habits, with the pushing through the resistance. And then there's also the body is right there operating like techniques and determining how much space has to push and what you can do with that much spatial cooperation. Like you can push from space and generate a certain amount of currents, and then the athleticism of the body determines what you can do with that power level. That's the main difference between like me and 20-year-old me, is that like as you get older, it's like not only does your body change, but mostly the space changes. Your hydration changes, your fluidity. So my space is not like as dense. So yeah, you can just train to move from the space like this. Right now I'm training mostly space, right? And this, when I say I'm focusing on the space, it's the same thing as saying like, oh, I'm going to focus on my quad, my scrawny little emaciated quad, right? I'll focus on that. Am I not using the rest of my body? Like, no, of course, I'm just focusing on it. So when I say I'm moving with the space mostly here, I'm just saying I'm focusing on that more so than I am any muscle. And if I did this regularly, I would build up a spatial strength of changing direction like this. The fluid, the presence, or the consciousness surrounding my body is the source of this movement. And then I can change it to the inside and do the same movements with my trying to focus on using my musculoskeletal system and bones. So same movement potentially, but one is under the water and one is on the surface, basically. With a paradoxical thing of somebody in the depths having a more accurate correspondence with how the air feels to float than somebody stuck on the surface trying to go up into the air. It'll paradoxically make them heavier. So I don't do stuff up here very much, and it just feels like my space is very not dense, like very weak. So weakness is what makes like acrobatics and planches and calisthenics difficult for a normal person. If you don't grow up or get around the culture of these particular activities, you tend to not know how to focus on the space that they all focus on. And so then that's kind of what you get from cultural participation, is spatial awareness of like where to focus, where to have discipline, like where to push yourself from, and like where you push your body from opens up different avenues of like spatial understanding or spatial awareness, right, which ties into being motivated by higher things or lower things. But this spatial, the heart field, is all one field. So if you're in it, you're in it, you're in it. Like however, whatever's working to get you in it, unifies it with all other whatever in there. And so just as a group or as a collective intelligence or like a hive mind, a human hive mind, like the most useful thing anybody can do is to be in this cardiovascular heart space, because you bring that space around you like wherever you go. So everyone becomes more like cardiovascularly energized around people that know how to breathe, because wherever those people are, like breathing is happening. And a lot of people have it figured out on their own. Like, you know, you can breathe fine, like when you're in a cushion or exercising or an event, but like, you know, you might find that you stop breathing everywhere else. Because your cardiovascular engagement in any particular moment is like what you're really bringing to the table with your effort. And so it's just outside of like saints and artists and athletes and with like villains, like diabolical people with crazy intentions and passions out of control, most people aren't really trying. Like that's why evil is so rampant, is because at least when people are evil, it makes them feel alive and they try really hard. That's pretty much why evil wins, is because they really, like, they want it, like, really bad. And a lot of times when you're good, you're, like, kind of demotivated because you're not, like, you're like, oh, I'm not getting what I want. And then the evil people are like, come to our side, and we'll give you what you want. And you're like, oh, no. And then, yeah, and then you're like, everything. So I'm back to doing like first exercise, so I have a single fin. I'm still out of shape. I never get to exercise, and anytime I do have free time to exercise, I'll like make a video. Wow, it's just my heart's so weak. That's why I'm so skinny. And I just have to like move, I have to do the cardio. And this cardio is never sexy, like nobody wants to watch you do cardio. People are interested in the insights, people are interested in the extreme feats, but the actual cardio, the amount of like repetition and movement that like leads up to a thing, nobody's interested in it. Because I mean, seriously, it's like what, a billion steps? And I guess what's the point of all this is like, I guess it's just like, I'm trying to prove scientifically that like, anybody not thinking this way, there's a lot of people out there thinking exactly the way that I'm saying you think. It's just, anybody not thinking like that is retarded. So the majority of doctors, the majority of a lot of people, there's a lot of not retarded people out there. But if you're not thinking this way, if your doctor's not thinking this way, if your teachers aren't thinking that way, they're retarded. And deep down in their heart, they know they are. So it's like you need to cut out there's just a lot of stupid stuff happening in schools, in gyms, in churches. That's not based off of, it's just the obviousness. Like there's some subtle things that we could argue about, some like mysteries, but there's also like an obvious truth known to everybody, right? And so anybody that's not like working or problem solving from that angle overtly is, what's a good word to call that? What do you call it when you're out of touch with reality? I'm so cynical about all this. I used to care back in like 2008, 2012. This is crazy. So my legs are burning, but it's because of the heart connection, which is what I want. So it feels like my heart's not weak enough to fuel my legs. But once I get that leg burn going, that venous pattern, you know how the veins look like lightning bolts? The arteries look like lightning bolts discharging from the heart? They are. So when you get that cardiovascular burn, you don't have to go crazy with it, but anywhere you can get that burn, you're feeling that electricity, that oxygen, that prana move from the heart into that body part. Trying to see if I can get as you go further down into my calves. So at this point, I'm not exercising in the traditional sense of the word. I'm pushing electricity into my legs. And I'm using movement that pushes on and drives the electricity into my legs. That cardiovascular burn is how I can feel the electricity driving. So I know I'm doing it right there. And I can use that momentum that I have in those places to drive the electricity further into neighboring muscle groups like the calves. But the correct form or the correct technique for the squat is to sit on and drive the blood into the toes. Drive the blood into the muscles. Drive the blood out of the heart, electrical. With all of the arteries being electrical conduits into the capillaries. And then you're listening, your quietness, your stillness is the yin or the negative pole of that. Kind of a different activity, but also it's happening right now whether you like it or not. Right? So the yin allows the yang to push harder. But we won't talk about that. And yeah, so once you find the blood, you're finding the blood like I was talking about, and then the squat is pushing on into the blood. So the blood is pushing you up and you're pushing the blood out into the periphery. So the blood can go out here. The blood goes down the arteries and then it's fractally out. So the blood emits from the heart exactly like a lightning bolt. And then once that's warmed up, right, your squat is the connection falling into and pushing on the blood and pushing the blood out. So after you're warmed up, the movement becomes much more like blood oriented, where there's just pressure on the water, pressure on the breath. So simple movement, more pressure, more power. And so then if you take this out, the grounding is going to be just into the balance, right? This grounding can go into balance and the rail. No rail, that you can fall into the blood, fall into the blood, and then the pressure has to go into the blood equally, otherwise you'll fall over. And like that's it. Like this is back to the story of like Cain and Abel, where it's like, well, Cain thought this technique was wrong, or the body was wrong, when it's like the heart, the content is God. That's what we would call God. Having God on your side is the same as getting up and following your exercise discipline, your prayer rule, pushing yourself through suffering, pushing yourself through turmoil, like staying animated. Because if you check out from up here, if there's a current that way, you'll go unconscious, and then that's the dream state, right? The dream state is when there's a current in life, or the archons, the archetypes, the stars, is constantly emitting wind, and if somebody's asleep, they're just getting blown around by whatever the gods tell them to do. And somebody who's awake is a god, is a deity, protecting this one body, or protecting this family, or protecting, but the personality shift comes up into this realm. And so it's kind of stupid to talk about it. Like you have to be a little bit of a clown to really talk about it correctly, because if you talk about it seriously, it's clowning around. It's seriously not talked about. The people that like get it seriously don't really talk about it. They just kind of do it. And the people that seriously talk about it definitely don't get it. And then the joker, the jackasses that tell you the truth, it's like they can't. It's like if everyone lies, only the liars tell the truth. And yeah, in a world of lying, only the liars speak the truth. Otherwise, it's like only the gods speak the truth. Truth is only spoken by the gods and the liars. So the gods is any awakened human capable of not being just completely controlled by astrology. That's why Christians aren't into astrology. It's not that that doesn't exist. It's not like there's not those pressures that do press on you at the moment of your birth and for your entire life and your entire generation. Yes, but what are you? No, you're just you. You're this. You're not the stars. You would say, oh, everyone's going to be pushed to be doing this month, but what does that have to do with me? Nothing. So that's why astrology was written off by being like, if astrology is dictating your life very much, you're just weak. And I don't mean that as like a diss.